Hey there, drone fans. Rick here again from Drone Valley. Well, today is another really exciting day at the shop because right here in front of me, I've got the brand new Hubsan Zino Mini Pro drone. Now, I've talked about this drone an awful lot on the channel over the last few weeks, ever since it was announced, because I believe on paper, this drone has the potential to really shake up that sub 250 gram category. And that's a good thing for anybody out there flying a drone today for a couple of reasons. For starters, anytime a company like Hubsan releases a drone that has a feature set that's slightly more advanced than the current products on the market, it forces all the other drone companies to go back to the drawing board and scramble to build features into their next generation drone that eclipse what's available. So it kind of drives technology forward, which is great for all of us. The other thing it does is it helps to lower prices on drones because as a consumer, I look at what a product can do and what it costs me. And those are the two metrics that I use to compare a product against another product in the market. And if you have 4 or 5 healthy drone companies all releasing new products on a regular basis, I'm going to look at that and say, okay, what's the feature set? What's the price? What's the best value for my dollar? So it tends to lower costs over time, which is great for all of us. Now, before I get too deep into the unboxing, which is what I'm going to do today, I want to make it crystal clear that I don't work for Hubsan. I'm not paid by Hubsan to say anything that I'm going to say. These are all my personal opinions. I bought this drone just like all of you did. I paid cash dollars for it, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion of the drone. Now, today's clip's just going to be an unboxing because I haven't opened it yet. I haven't flown it yet. I cannot wait to get inside this box and get it up in the air and start testing it. But I thought I'd open it up in front of you because I know a lot of people are waiting to see what the drone looks like. Now, I know there's also a lot of strong opinions out there about Hubsan as a company and about this drone in particular, and I can't really address those, but I'll give you my personal opinions of what I think of the drone. I'll try and address them a little bit at the end of this clip. I know a lot of people are also frustrated that it took this long for the drone to arrive, myself included. I ordered the drone the day of announcement. We were promised a bunch of ship dates through the summer, and lo and behold, now they're starting to ship. Now, I can't address all of those issues, but I will talk a little bit about it at the end because any technology, quite honestly, during this pandemic in particular, is going to be delayed. There are chip shortages, there are shipping delays. There's a million reasons why products from China take longer to get to the States. We manufacture a lot of products ourselves. I've had huge delays and price increases on products that we produce. So I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. I'm also not going to beat the product up because I'm a fan of technology in general. And I'm blown away by the level of technology the companies are able to incorporate into a flying robot for this price point. So I'm going to talk about what it can do. I'm going to be honest as well. I review products from every company on the planet. There really hasn't been a product that I've seen out of the box do exactly what the company says it's going to do on day one. That's just an honest truth about technology because you're involved in a development cycle, a production cycle, a testing and engineering, a packing and shipping cycle. So there's a long delay between when you build that beautiful widget and when it ends up in a consumer's hands. And that delay can affect a lot of things. And a lot of times you have to make a decision to ship a product that's 85 or 90% ready that you can modify in the field to be 100 or 110% ready. And that's going to happen with this product just like it did with pretty much every drone I fly, where it lands day one with a certain feature set that improves over time, and in a lot of cases even advances beyond what it said it could do at the first day that I bought it. So I expect a lot of the things that people are complaining about that are possibly inside this drone will be fixed with firmware updates. So we'll take it from there. Now, the question you might be asking is, where's my drone, right? I have one in front of me. And again, I don't have a relationship with Hubsan as far as a financial engagement, but as a technology guy, I got frustrated. So I started reaching out to the company. I found a bunch of contacts. I finally reached the right person at Hubsan, developed a bit of a relationship to sort of say, look, I want to get the drone to test it. There are a lot of people asking about it. How do I get an advanced copy of the drone? I understand you got major shipping delays. And they were kind enough to say, look, Rick, we're going to get one off the production line. We're going to FedEx it to the States. You're going to have it in a couple of days. So a couple of days ago, I got the phone call. Hey, can you come to New York City? And of course, Hurricane Ida was rolling through New Jersey and New York at that time, so the subways were flooding. I couldn't go in that day, but I went in last night. It was a bit of a James Bond meeting in a little coffee shop, and passed the drone across the table. And it was neat. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they're doing that. I shouldn't be picking on them. I love having the drone, but I know from that meeting that there's a huge container that came in on a ship that's in the port right now that's being unloaded with a bunch more of these that are going to be shipped next week. So if you're waiting for it, and again, I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the clip about it, I expect you're going to start seeing some delivery scheduling next week on the technology. Now, what I have in front of me is the 128 gigabyte version. It's what we call the Fly More combination. If it was a DJI, it includes extra batteries, extra propellers, a case, all the cool things that are out there. I wanted to buy the one that was fully featured with the 128 gigs in it because I wanted to see what the top end of the line looks like. So I'm going to open it up now. I'm going to do a brief unboxing. I'll also take a closer look at each of the components and explain the ports, connections, and switches to you. And then I promise you, over the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing a ton of testing on this. I'll be out flying it ad nauseum. We have a couple of beautiful days here in New Jersey scheduled for tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. It's the long Labor Day weekend, and I've got nothing to do but get outside with a bunch of charged batteries, get this thing up in the air, and start doing some testing against it. And I'll post other clips to give you some insight into that. So enough rambling on about that. Let me get into the box. Now, I tend to get giddy in these clips, and I promise you it's not artificial. I am a nerd from the early days, and I know I get grief for calling myself an engineer and a nerd, but I think you should be proud that you're a geek, because if you're watching this channel, you're a nerd. You're flying a drone. I guarantee you that flying that drone puts you in the top 3% of the population of the world, maybe the top 1% of the population of the world that are not up on drones. So if you're flying a drone, you're watching the channel, you're a nerd, I'm a nerd, be proud about being a nerd. Anyway, let's get into the box. So here we go. I've got my new slice cutter here. I love this thing. It's a ceramic blade. I've talked about it in the channel. It's a little bit safer than a metal blade, but it gets me inside the box and gives me something to talk about. All right, so we're inside the box. Wow, it's really well packed. Got a lot of foam in there. Look at that. So let me get this box out of the way. Holy smokes. All right, so I've got really nice cushioning on the sides, and there's the box. Okay, so it's the Zino Mini Pro 128 version. And everything's in the box. Let me get inside there. Now you can see it's still got the shrink wrap on it, so I haven't flown this thing yet. Haven't opened it yet. This is the first time I'm going to see it, and I love sharing this with you guys because for me, you get to be my age, there's not a lot of excitement in technology. You don't get Christmas presents that really amaze you, although my wife does a good job. But anytime I get new technology like this, I'm a kid at Christmas. I cannot help to hide my giddy side. All right, that looks like it's open. Yeah, it's open. That was interesting. All right, so inside I've got a bag that's got the container sealed in it. There's the box. Let me just set that off to the side. Again, everything's sealed. Let me get inside the box. Now, the combination I bought comes with the case. Case looks really nice. It's got a nice exterior that looks like it's going to do well in the weather. It's got sort of a, I don't know, like almost a vinyl, but a higher end vinyl exterior. So if I get it wet or get it dirty, I'm sure I can wipe it down. A lot of the drones come with a case like this, so I like the fact that they built a case around it that holds everything. The drone, the hub, the controller, the cables, the props, the batteries, everything's inside the case. So if I'm traveling for the day, that's a pretty small package to bring along. All right, so let's open it up. There's the drone. Oh, beauty. Look at that. All right, I'll set that guy down. Let's see what else is in here. All right, so I've got a charger. Okay, so that's a standard USB charger, and it's a USB-A in one end. So again, standard wall outlet for the US, plug it in. You got a USB-A connection there. I've got an extra battery. Here we go with the battery. Really nice. Got a button on top where you can test the charging on that. So it came through with 3 lights lit up. I've got another battery because the drone comes with 3 batteries if you buy this particular combination. And that one's got 2 bars of charge on it. And there's one in the drone. Let me see what that's got. 3 bars of charge on it there. So I've got 1, 2, 3 batteries, a bunch of packing materials. What's underneath here? Oh, there's the hub. Okay. So the combo comes with a hub that looks like it has a USB-A connection on the side. So I imagine once you power this up through the USB, looks like a micro. Let me get my glasses there. I don't want to lie to you. Micro. So I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed by that because they're going to say, why aren't they using USB-C? I could ask the same question, although you can fast charge through micro USB. That's the interface they chose, so that's what we're going with. But I like that they've got a USB-A connection over here. And then there's a barrel connection over here that I'm going to have to investigate because maybe there's a way to power this up from a solar power, a solar panel, or some other technology externally, and maybe that charges things faster. I also don't know if the quad of the hub charges serially or charges parallel. I'm going to suspect that it charges serially just like the other hubs do, where it's going to look for the battery that needs the least amount of charge that first, then move on to the next battery, move on to the next battery, and that's a really smart way to do it. And quite honestly, you really can't charge 4 batteries at the same time from a single USB charger. It's really difficult to do. So there's the hub. All right, where's the controller? All right, so there's a bunch of manuals here. There's your manuals, operating manual. Okay, 3 connectors for the controller. So it looks like, again, yep, micro USB to Apple, micro USB, and USB-C. So this will be the connection you'll use between the controller and your phone, and they give you one of each. And what else have we got in here? Okay, some other cables. There's a screwdriver that I'm sure is used to change the propellers. I've got 2 more cables here. I've got a USB-A to micro, and I've got another USB-A to micro. So this gives you the ability to charge through the hub. This gives you the ability, I guess, to charge the controller as well if you want to. Now, what's cool about this is you can probably charge the hub directly through the micro, plug this into your USB charger. Use a big USB charger that's got 2.5 or 3 amps of current so you can push as many electrons at that hub as possible. But I like the fact that they include a second cable because I'm going to use this from the hub to charge my controller as well. So everything you need to get started is in the kit. And these are pretty nice cables. This one's a little bit short, looks about a foot. This one I'm betting is a standard, maybe meter long cable, so it gives you plenty of room to the wall. And then the last thing is the controller. Now, where is the controller? That's interesting. Oh, it's in the bottom. All right, so there's a little flap you lift up here that actually lets you get at the controller. So the controller's really in the bottom, right down there on the bottom of the unit, and then you close this flap and the drone sits above it. So it's a very compact case that gets everything fit in there, and there's the controller. Now, I'm gonna say right out of the gate, this has got some weight to it. It feels real. It feels like a nice controller. Very, very stable controller. Let me open up the antennas. All right, so there's the antennas. Now, if you've flown any of the DJI products or some of the others, that'll look pretty familiar. But to be fair, there's not a lot of variants that you can build into a controller because you need it about that far apart. You need it to fit in your palms really well. You want the joysticks to fall right into your thumbs. If you're a pincher, you want to be able to do that as well. The bottom here pops out. Let me see if I can get that out before I make a fool of myself. Okay, so the phone fits below there, and it is really wide. I'll have to do a measurement on that and give it to you, but that'll definitely fit all the bigger phones that are on the market today. And they've got the joysticks on the bottom, so they're hidden down here. You can pull those off and put them up top. And on the bottom, you've got a micro USB connection there. And there's a slot off to the side here as well. I'm sure that's another connection. And that may be for pushing firmware up to this later on. So I'll take a closer look at this in a minute. But I want to get to the drone because, man, that's the thing that really has got me excited. So here's the drone. And they've got protectors on the antenna, the propellers there, so I'll take that off. And on the bottom, let me open her up. Yeah, boy, this is really nice, really small, really, really tiny. Okay, on the bottom, I've got a heat sink attached. Not a heat sink, that's the heat shield, what I've read online about the heat shield. And that pops off. So when you're flying, I'm sure that comes off. And then these swing out as opposed to down. So if you're used to the DJI drones, these swing out this way, these swing out that way. So when you're folding it up, you're going to fold these two in, and then you're going to fold these two on top of it. So kind of a different design, but works just great. And on the bottom, I've got a series of sensors, a couple more sensors here, probably a time of flight sensor. I know there's an optical sensor on there as well. There's a light, an LED light on the bottom. And in the front, you've got the gimbal lock there, 2 sensors up front, 2 sensors in the back, and again, 2 sensors on the bottom, so I can see 3-directional obstacle avoidance built into the unit. And again, I'm going to test all this stuff. I think obstacle avoidance is really nice to have, and I think it's great, especially for new pilots. If you're flying in areas where there's maybe wires or trees or whatever, even though you're keeping it in visual line of sight, having that extra protection in there as sort of a co-pilot to say, hey, you're getting close to that tree, you better back off, it'll protect you. Now, this is an interesting feature, and from what I understand from the people that have talked about this online, this bottom heatsink gets really, really hot when you're doing firmware updates. Now remember, the drone's supposed to be flying. That's part of its cooling profile. That's sitting there. It's going to get hot. When you're flying through the air, all that heat's being pulled away by the air passing the drone. But I think when you're doing firmware updates, this gets clicked on there to actually protect you from burning the surface you're putting it down on. 2 feet on the back, and the 2 front arms up front are where you're at. So I'll spend a little bit more time next taking a closer look at all these components and pointing out, again, what plugs into what and what does what, just so you have a feel for it. And then I'll come back at the end with a couple of final thoughts because I really want to address the delay conversations, which again, I'm not going to defend it, but I'm going to try and explain it, and some of the negative comments about the company, because as a technology fan, you've got an amazing flying robot here. Now, maybe it doesn't do everything that people think it should do, but I'm one of those guys that, you know, I'm not going to curse the darkness. I'm going to light a candle, right? I'm looking for whatever's coming next, even if it's clunky and a little bit sharp around the edges. I want to advance that technology. And people always say, oh, I don't like to be on the bleeding edge of things. And that's perfectly fine. You should buy what you're comfortable with. But for me, if there's a bleeding edge, it's behind me. I chase technology well out in front of that bleeding edge because I do a ton of research and in different aspects of technology, and I'm always wondering how that fits into new products that are coming out. So I love the fact that companies are taking chances like this, building products that are really ahead of the curve as far as what this sub 250 category presents today. So again, I'll spend a lot more time talking about it at the end, but stay tuned. I'll take a closer look at all these components, and then I'll come back with some final thoughts. Inside the kit, you'll find the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro drone, a controller for the drone, 3 cables that are used to connect that controller to your phone or your tablet. On one end, they're micro USB connections. That plugs into the controller. The other end has got the word phone printed on it, and that connects to your phone or your tablet. There's a micro USB, a USB-C, and an Apple connector, and it's important you observe the polarity of making sure you plug this end into the controller. You'll also find 2 sets of replacement propellers that can be used with the drone, and a screwdriver to allow you to change those propellers. There are 3 batteries in the kit, these 2 plus the one that's in the drone. there's a charging hub that'll let you serially charge 4 batteries at the same time. So essentially what it's going to do is check the batteries that are plugged into it, find the one that needs the least amount of charge that one first, then move on to the next battery. You'll find a charger in there as well, and this is a little bit more sophisticated than a standard 5-volt USB charger. It can actually voltage switch between 5 volts, 9 volts, and 12 volts, and change current ratings as well, depending on how much of a charge the batteries need. So it's much more like a QC or PD charger where it can change the voltage and current as needed. You'll also find 2 USB cables. This one's a longer cable, that's a USB-A on one end, and a micro USB here for the charging hub to connect up to the charger, and a shorter cable that again is a USB-A on one end and a micro USB on the other end that you can plug into this USB-A connection here to charge an external device like the controller. You'll also find a full instruction manual that lists connection diagrams, specifications, and other information you'll need to effectively fly this drone. The batteries included with the kit are 3,000 milliampere hours. On the front, you'll find a button where you can use to check the actual charge of the battery. There are 3 LEDs right here that indicate 25% of a charge for each of those LEDs. So in this case, I have 2 LEDs lit. That means the battery's at 50% charge. If the third one was blinking, it would be 50 plus about a half. So it's somewhere between 50 and 100%, somewhere in that 75% range. If that was on solid, it'd be 75% charged. On the back of the battery, you'll see the connections right here that actually mate with the drone to provide the current and voltage needed to operate the drone. And what was interesting is I found 2 more connections down here that I'm pretty sure they're going to use for verifying that the battery is fully seated in the drone. So I'll do a little more investigation on that, but I found it interesting that there were 2 connections down here as well. The charging hub allows you to quickly charge up to 4 batteries by simply sliding them onto the top of the hub. When you connect up the batteries and then connect the hub up to a power supply, it starts a self-test to see which of the batteries need the least amount of charge and fully charges that battery, then moves on to the next one, the third one, and finally the fourth one in order of charge needed. And you'll know which battery it's charging because when you first connect the hub up to the power supply, that center LED will come on, letting you know you have valid power to the hub. When you drop a battery in and it starts charging, the LED pointing to that battery will light up, letting you know that particular battery is being charged. You'll also see the LED strobing across the top of the battery. Once that's completely charged, it'll move on to the next one and walk its way through all 4 batteries. Now, connections on the outside of the hub, you'll find a micro USB connection there, and that's used with the included cable to connect this up to the power supply. You'll also find a full-sized USB-A connection right there. That's an output port that allows you to charge some external device like the controller, your phone, or a tablet, and you can use the included cable that came with the kit to charge the controller. It's a micro USB here and a full-size USB-A there, but if you have a different style phone or tablet, you can use a standard USB-A cable to whatever device you'd like to charge. You'll also find a barrel connection right there. Now, I'll have to do a little bit of research on that. My suspicion is that can be used with a different style of power supply to provide all the energy you need to charge all the batteries. The included remote controller is pretty straightforward. On the top of the unit, you'll find 2 joysticks that control the flight of the quad, a digital display that gives you a lot of good information about the current flight, including telemetry, so it's a great place to keep an eye on your battery levels, your distance, your signal strength. Below that are 3 buttons. The one on the left is a return to home button. If you tap and hold that, it'll force the drone to go into a return to home mode, which will have it fly to a certain height, fly back to the original takeoff point, and land pretty much where it took off, and I'll test how accurate that is. In the center is a power button. If you tap it once, it'll give you the current charge level of the remote controller. If you tap it and hold it, it'll turn the controller on. To the right of that is the flight mode button, and you have a choice between movie mode, which is F, normal mode, which is N, and sport mode, which is S, and that just varies the speed at which the quad's flying. Movie mode puts it in really slow motion. Normal is where you'll fly most days and gives you some pretty good footage, and sport mode allows you to fly it really fast. On the top are 2 antennae. These fold nice against the body of it, and you'll notice there's a little notch right there. That clicks into this stub that's sticking out. You can actually close it and keep it locked like that so they don't flop around in your bag and get broken. You'll also find a couple of other controls up here. This is the photo button, so if you want to take a photo when you're flying, tap that. If you want to start recording, tap that. This is the gimbal control wheel. It actually varies the pitch of the gimbal up and down, and you can use that to actually zero in on what you want to film. And there's a function button right over there that you can program through the app. On the right side of the controller is a micro USB connection. You use that to actually charge the controller from the included power supply or connect up one of the 3 cables to the device you're going to use for remote controlling your drone. So you'll make sure you plug the micro USB end in here and then whatever mates up with your phone on the other end. On the bottom of the unit, you'll find, let me fold these antennas in. On the bottom of the unit, you'll find the drawer that actually pulls out to hold your phone. There's a notch there where you can grab it and slide it out this way. There are two holders down there. These joysticks are removable, so you can pull those off and store them in there and close it up so they're not sticking out in your bag. And I made a mistake earlier when I talked about this being a micro USB connection. It's actually not. It's an open slot where you can hide the cable when you're closing this up. So you can actually leave the connection cable on, feed it down through here, put it in there as like a storage slot, close this up, and then the cable's protected. And that's pretty much it for the controller on first pass. There's a little bit of ventilation on the back, obviously, to let any heat that develops during operation escape through the back. Now we'll take a closer look at the drone, and it's currently in its folded position because I wanted to show you the best way to actually open the drone. So you'll start by holding it in your hand from the bottom, and you're going to want to swing these two top arms out towards the front of the drone. Now you might be tempted to grab it here because it's easy to get a hold of it, but that's really kind of a fragile point to grab it. That's the antenna that transmits and receives from the controller. So you want to grab it right here at the motor mount. That's kind of the beefiest part of the arm, and you'll swing these out towards the front of the drone. And then you'll hold the body here and swing these bottom arms back towards the back of the drone into their fully open position. Now, one thing to keep in mind, all of these arms are spring-loaded. So what you'll find is when you get to about midway in the travel right here, it's going to want to swing open on its own all the way to end of travel. Don't let go of that arm because it may seem like a simple thing to just let it snap open, especially if you're in a hurry to get up flying. But over time, the inertia of that flying open like that and hitting the end of travel will crack this piece right in here and it'll give you trouble down the road. So always hang on to the arm all the way through the end of travel. Now I'm going to start on the bottom of the drone because there's kind of a unique feature right here, this cage assembly, and that's there to protect you from the heat sink underneath because when you're flying the drone, this won't be on. The drone is being cooled by the air passing by it, so all these components are going to be cooled really nicely when you're flying. But if you have it on your desk and you're doing a firmware update to it, or you're going to transfer files off this to your computer, that heat sink's going to get really hot because remember, they're packing a lot of technology inside this tiny little package, so that's going to get really hot. Make sure you leave that cage on there so you're not going to hurt the surface you set it down on. But when you're flying, you want to take that cage off, and it just pops off really easy. So you snap it off like that, and you're good to go. Now, there's a lot of technology here on the bottom of the unit. You've got the heat sink, which again is going to radiate that excessive heat off the drone and be cooled as you're flying. You're going to find an LED right there, which helps in landing. You've got a downward vision sensor for precision landing and crash avoidance, and a pair of infrared sensors that help with low altitude stability. Now, I've got to test the return to home precision landing. I'm assuming that it may not be working at launch because I know that's something they were working on, but these cameras are going to insist with looking down at the place you took off. So it's going to look down and try and match up the picture it took when you took off to actually land on the mat. So I'll be testing that pretty extensively. On the back of the drone, you'll see two more sensors that are crash avoidance sensors here. They're stereoscopic sensors, and two more on the front of the drone right here. So that'll protect it moving forward, moving backwards from running into obstacles on either side. On this side of the drone, not a whole lot to look at, but on this side of the drone, you'll actually notice there's a label on there, and if you read that, it says, warning, this slot cannot be used for a memory card. So I guess originally the design was to allow you to put an SD card in there like most of the other drones have, but what you've got is the SD card slot, but there's actually no carrier behind it to put an SD card into. So don't try and jam an SD card in there. When you buy the drone with 64 or 128 gigabytes, that's the amount of capacity you have, and all your stuff's going to be stored on that internal capacity. That's a sync button right there. And again, be gentle when you push that. Don't jam a big paper clip in there and really jam in on it. Be gentle, but that's going to help you sync up the drone to your controller if that needs to happen later for pairing. Now on the front, you've got a gimbal protector right here, which actually obviously protects the gimbal and keeps it in a locked position. To remove that, touch the tab here, gently unclip it and slide it off. And then save this. Don't crack this or throw it away. That's something you're going to need to put on there to protect that gimbal when you're traveling. And that basically locks the gimbal in position, locks the camera in the forward position, and protects the lens on the front. So that's something you're going to want to put back on, and that's standard on most of the drones out there. And I think that was about it. Oh, other than the power supply in the back. So you've got a battery right here. You can check the current in the battery by tapping that button. It'll show you how much of a charge it's got. If you tap it and hold it, it'll go through a power on self-test and actually power up and start the drone. Below that is a micro USB connection. Now you might be inclined to think, well, that's great. I can actually charge the battery in the drone by connecting this to a USB charger. That doesn't happen. You've got to charge this externally to the drone. The reason that's there is it allows you to connect the drone up to your computer to transfer the files from the internal memory to your computer. So you'll use the micro USB cable here to whatever connection you've got on your computer, USB-C or USB-A, and actually transfer those files. And I'll do a complete clip showing you how to make that transfer between the drone and your computer. I hope you found that closer look helpful. And now I have a few final thoughts on those two topics I mentioned at the beginning of the clip. And we've gotten a ton of questions from viewers over the last couple of weeks on both of these. And I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there going on, so I thought I'd address both of them. The first one has to do with the shipping delays. Why did it take so long to get this product to consumers? And the second has to do with technology. Can this product actually deliver everything that was promised when you open up the box? Now, before I get too deep into it, it's my opinion on why these things are happening, and I did talk to the representative from Hubsan, so I've got a little bit of insight from their side and their perspective as well, but I'll try and give you some perspective in general, because I've been fortunate over the last 40 years, if you can believe that, to have worked for a lot of different engineering companies. So I've worked for consumer electronics companies and commercial electronics companies, and again, I've been involved in every aspect of product development, from initial concept all the way through delivery to a consumer. And I can promise you, this is a complicated process. That spectrum of concept to delivery involves a lot of different people, a lot of different teams, a lot of different technologies in this case, and each one of those stages introduces delays. Now, you start off with a concept. There are a bunch of smart people that get together and they'll look at a market segment and say, we're going to build a box. What kind of box are we going to build that competes with the other boxes that are out there? How big has it got to be? What color should it be? How expensive? How heavy? So all those parameters are captured in a project. And that project is handed off to development people. They're typically engineers in this case because they're building digital technology that say to them, here's the box, build this box. And they start scrambling to put together parts that are off the shelf that they can build that product from and develop proprietary technologies. And that takes a lot of time because you've got to build that stuff, test it on the bench, then hand it off, in this case, to test pilots to go out in the field and fly it. And those test pilots give feedback to the development team to say, it's not doing this right, it's doing that wrong, can you fix this part of it? Wouldn't it be cool if we could build this feature into it? So the development team has to gestate on that for quite a bit of time. And each of these teams have to decide when they pass it off to the next team. So the development team is working with the test people to say, yeah, we've got a product that's rock solid. We think it's 85 or 90% ready. Let's push it into production. Now the production team takes over and they've got to look at what the engineers built and said, we have to build a frame for it. We've got to source materials. We've got to find manufacturers. We've got to source chips to build it. We've got to source other technologies. And all of that's dependent on a lot of companies outside of the company that's building the product. So in this case, part of the delay was the chip shortage. We all know about the chip shortage. I mean, I just read today that General Motors are shutting down plants in the U.S. because they can't get chips to build their cars. So it's not just made up. People are suffering from a chip shortage, and that affects this kind of technology. So once the manufacturing folks get involved, now they have to build prototypes. They've got to put the technology in the prototype, put it up in the air, and make sure that it flies the way the engineers designed it to fly. Once they're ready, they hand it off to marketing. Now, marketing's got to sit down, put together some kind of glossy flyers about it, put a video together to talk about it, put a website together, build a box for it, build all the materials and paraphernalia that go in that box, put packaging together. So again, at every stage of this development, it's not nearly at the consumer yet, but when do you start talking about the technology? Because if I wait until I get to here, somebody else has come out with a drone that already eclipsed me because this is a fast-moving market. So anybody gets a rumor out there about, oh, Hubsan's building a drone that's got, a crash avoidance in it and it can fly for 40 minutes. Believe me, the other drone companies hear that and they're like, man, we got to race a product out. So they accelerate the development cycle all the way through production to delivery, knowing full well that probably here they're at 80%. And they can fix a lot of that in the field with firmware upgrades and microcode upgrades. The production's rock solid so the product can fly, the marketing's ready, and then there's the shipping. Now that's where the other delay comes in because we all know what the coronavirus has done to all of our lives in a very horrible way. But from a shipping perspective, just to isolate that aspect of it, there's not a lot of product coming out of China because there was a lot of problems in China with the virus initially. So that whole food chain of delivery, putting boats in the water, putting containers on those boats, getting them across the ocean, getting them to the States. Then when they get here at the port, they've got to unload them. And there's a glut of stuff that's been hanging out there for a long time. So there's a ton of delay at every step in this process. Now, I guess the catch-22 is if I'm the marketing manager, I'm not for this product, I'm not involved with the product. But in general, if I was the marketing manager, when do I tell consumers about it? Here or when it's ready to ship? If I wait till when it's ready to ship, all of a sudden other competitors may meet me to the market. Now I've got a product that's a generation behind. So somewhere in here, I've got to start talking to consumers about what we're building and maybe get them to buy that product. Now, companies will decide where in this food chain they decide to talk to consumers, but it looks like Hubsan started somewhere around here, where they started talking about, it's going to be cool, it's going to be amazing, here's the video. Then when it was done, it was produced, we saw the video that they tested it. There's still tweaking going on for the engineering all the way through the process. So what we get at the end of this process is unfortunately a product that's delayed. Now, had we not had coronavirus delay everything, I think this would have been delivered pretty close to on time. But again, it's totally up to Hubsan when they get the product to the consumers. But I can tell you more specifically, after talking to the contact, that right now in New York City, there's a large container full of these drones that is being unloaded as we speak, which means they're going to be shipped next week. Now, again, unfortunately, fortunate for me because it's a long weekend, but unfortunately for shipping, Monday's a holiday. Nobody's shipping anything Monday. So it would have gone out Monday. It's not going out Monday. It's going to go out Tuesday. So I fully expect next week, midweek, people that have bought the drones are starting to get ship notifications that the drones are on their way. The other thing that complicates it a little bit is they didn't build one drone. They built 2 versions of the drone, actually 5 versions of the drone. They've got the drone at 64 and 128 gigs. They've got single batteries, multiple batteries, hubs, no hubs. So there's multiple versions of this, and I'm sure that container's got a little bit of each. So you're probably going to see these things coming out, in spurts of delivery. I also know that there's another container on the way, or maybe 2 containers on the way that's a week or 2 out. So you're going to start seeing these flood the market very soon. I guess just hang in there. And I'm not making an apology for the company, even though it sounds like I am. I'm just trying to give you my perspective of being involved in that manufacturing, the development, manufacturing, delivery process over the last 40 years. It's a complicated process, and it's a bit of a poker game as to when you announce a product versus when you can deliver it. All right, so the second topic is around technology, and again, it's kind of the same thing because when you promise a product, the design engineers over here have to decide when they're ready to turn it over to production. And all the things they're building into this, I guarantee you that Hubsan's built a lot of drones in the past that were, I don't want to say lower quality, but lower price drones. They were more toy category type drones that were kind of cool. They were inexpensive. You could buy them on Amazon. You could fly them. They didn't have GPS coordination in them. They didn't fly for 40 minutes. They didn't have 4K, 30 frames a second video quality out of them. They didn't have crash avoidance. So they're building a lot of space age technology into this. In a lot of ways, this is kind of like the rebirth of Hubsan, where they've got a product now that challenges some of the major players in the market space. You've got an 800-pound gorilla in DJI that owns, by any measure, 70% of the market space. It's a brave thing for a company to come out with a drone that says, you know what? We're not going to just match you. We're going to do better than you. So it's a challenge. So engineering-wise, the pressure on those development engineers to get this product out to market is insanely intense. So they're going to say, we're 80% of the way there. We haven't quite tweaked everything yet, but there's firmware coming that'll fix that in the field. So by the time you get through production, delivery, and it gets to a consumer's hands, that firmware update will be ready. So sure enough, when I power this thing up in about an hour, I guarantee you there's firmware that has to be downloaded on it. That's because between when these guys signed off on it and when it got to me, a lot of stuff has been improved in there. So I'm fully expecting this is not going to do everything they promised at launch. Matter of fact, I've seen some review videos that kind of pick on aspects of it, and I'm sure those are in there in mine as well. Maybe not. Maybe I've got a newer version of the firmware, but my job, I think, is to test it and to tell you exactly what works with the product today. And I always tend to be optimistic because I'm old school. I'm a bit older than most of my viewers, but when I was a kid, my parents always told me, if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything. And I live by that credo. So I'm not going to sit here and beat this thing up to say, gee, it would be great if it did that, or it should have done that. And why didn't it do this? That's not my design. It's their design. What I am going to champion is the advances this product provides over the current technology. Why would you buy this? Why is it different? Is it worth the difference? And again, you have to make that decision for yourself. I'm not going to be a fanboy for anybody. I'm a fanboy for the technology. In this case, it happens to be Hubsan. I guarantee you that all the other major players on the market, and again, I'm under NDA with some of them, have products coming that'll probably eclipse this one. So I'm going to check that next product, check the next product. I'm going to stay on top of the technology. All I can do is present this as a kit and explain what it can do, but let's not cry about what it can't do. Let's champion what it can do today, because as I said at the top of the clip, competition in this space is incredibly important, because if we beat up these guys for not doing everything they said they should be doing at launch, and everybody gets down on them and starts cranky about them and all the rest of that, maybe they decide they're not going to build drones in this space anymore. Who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit me. It benefits the other manufacturers that now have one less competitor to force them to advance their technology. So just like with the GoPro Karma back in the day, I was a fan of GoPro getting into the market because just having another brand name in the market forced everybody to up their game. This is going to force everybody to up their game. So that's my 2 cents on it. Now, I'm sure I didn't answer all your questions today. And again, I do have a good contact at Hubsan. I know everybody says they do. I actually do. So I'll be talking to him on a regular basis, talking about the feedback and the technology, things you want to see in the drone. I can't help you with deliveries. All I can say is be patient on that. I know it stinks that it isn't here yet and you want to get out and fly, but I have pretty good authority that they're being shipped next week. And I'm sure some of you will see them. There'll be a flood of videos on YouTube reviewing those drones once they hit. But if you have have questions that you need answered, send it to me. I'll collect those up. I'll send them along and try and get you the answers you need. And I promise you, I have so many more clips I'm going to be doing on this technology. I'm going to take it out. I can't wait to get outside and fly with it, put it up in the air, and I'll do video quality comparisons with the Mini 2 and other drones in the category. I'll talk about the tech. I'll do close-ups on the software and what works inside the drone. But that's pretty much it for today. I'm sorry the clip was as long as it was, but I wanted to make sure I fully covered the drone, gave you an unboxing, showed you a closer look, and then addressed some of the controversy that's going on out there about Hubsan. The last thing I'll say is, please don't flame me. I'm just the guy flying drones. Again, I love the hobby. I love getting people involved in the hobby. Every time somebody calls me and says, Rick, I saw a clip of yours. I bought a drone. My family and I are out in the fresh air and the sunshine. We've never had a better time with the hobby. It lifts me a little bit. It lifts my spirit a little bit. I just love that. So that's what I'm here to do. That's it. So thanks again for watching. Hang in there. These are on their way, and have fun flying. Thanks again. And until next time, happy flying.